Hello everyone and welcome to the Alnwick trial site here at Buston Barns. We're here to do our variety plot tours. Normally we would have an open day in the run up to the Highland show, but unfortunately with the coronavirus situation we're not able to do that this year. So we're doing a virtual tour and we have Stuart McIntyre, who is our Northern Seeds manager, along today to run round and do the tour. We're on a particularly sandy site here, which if you've watched any of our terra map videos you'll have seen that just behind me is the sort of brow of the hill. It turns into a very sandy site and that has affected some of the varieties, and we will be picking up on that as we go around. So I'll hand over to Stuart as he starts on the wheats and he will take you through the wheats and then on to the winter barleys.
Hi, I'm Stuart McIntyre, Northern Seeds manager for Hutchinson's. Today I'm standing in the Buston Barns variety trial site at just outside Alnwick in Northumberland. We've got 44 varieties of wheat and 30 varieties of barley here. Normally we'd be having our open day and we'd be inviting folk around talking about the varieties. Unfortunately that's not possible, so we're going to video a tour and talk about the varieties via video link. We're going to start with the group 1s and the wheats right through to the hard group 4s. So I've got the treated plots with the signs on to my left, and to the right is the untreated, and we'll show you the differences as we go through on certain varieties. So as I say, starting with the group 1, we've got Skyfall. These are the milling wheats, the out and out milling wheats, the quality wheats. There's nothing really new here. We've got Skyfall. It's been the most popular. It's been the most popular wheat. 2% behind the pace of the highest one, so it's 97 for yield. Not the best on yellow rust, and as you can see from the untreated plot, it's really broken down to yellow rust this year. But it's been really popular with the millers. Second one's Crusoe, been around a long time. Behind the pace, but it has got the best quality as for the milling varieties, and it's been rumoured that the millers are going to pay a premium for this variety this year. Niche market, there's not a lot of it about, but still popular with the millers. Zayat's the other one of the group 1s of quality wheats. Better disease scores, although we're seeing it breaking down to yellow rust this time. It's the highest yield and it's 99% for yield. And to be honest, there's not a lot of difference between Zayat and Skyfall. It's more local area, so if you were further south and you wanted to drill later and you're bothered about the orange blossom midge, you would go for Skyfall. If you're chasing out and out yield and you're not bothered about the orange blossom midge, you would probably pick Zayat. And then, as I say, the Crusoe's the niche market and getting the quality wheats. There's one here called Blossom and it got withdrawn before it entered into the RL trials, so it's not made it. So that's the end of the group 1s. We're going to move into the group 2s now, and the first two varieties here, Siskin and Lily, they've been around a long time now. Siskin's later drilling. It's a nice variety, keep the seed rates up. Lily is a year older than the Siskin. Once again, it's done as well, but I think there's better in the groups. These group 2s, you want to be growing them as out and out feed varieties, and then if you get the export premium, then that's a bonus. Detroit was new on last year, 101 for yield. Its disease package is okay. It's good on yellow rust. Septoria is a bit weaker on the Septoria. It's never really demanded a market share because the one that's come on this time is KWS Stays, and this is the one I want to spend a little bit of time on because I think this variety is worth talking about. 101 national average for yield, 100 in the north. Its key attributes is it's exceptionally clean. It's one of the cleanest varieties. It's got the highest untreated yields, and Septoria is 8.1, so it's got the second best Septoria score of any variety. The yellow rust, good on yellow rust, is 9 for yellow rust, so an exceptionally clean variety, and it's going to fit in a lot of places. One thing I will say of this variety, it's not an early driller because it really pushes through the growth stages. If you drill that early, it'll get a lot of top on it going into the winter, and that's, run the risk. And likewise, going into the spring, you have to manage this with nitrogen management on this. I think it's really important that the nitrogen program's right because it goes through the growth stages really quick in the spring, And if you don't get early nitrogen on, you're in danger of it dropping a few tillers, which is obviously going to compromise your yield. So although it's a really clean variety, it's good to look after, you have to make sure that you get your timely applications of both nitrogen and fungicides, because it's racing through them growth stages. But I really like that. That's one of the picks of the tour. So then we've got a candidate variety in LG Seeker. This one, 102 for yield. So yeah, it's up there in the yield of the Group 2s. Its disease package isn't quite as good as Xtase. You're going to say, well, why would you grow that over Xtase? Good. I don't know whether it's going to get on or not. It might do. The one key characteristic of this is its eye spot score. It's got an 8 for eye spot. So if you're looking for a key characteristic to carry this through into to get onto the recommended list, then that might be it. We'll have to wait and see. On the untreated plots, it's absolutely full of yellow rust. Even though it's got a 7, it's looking pretty dirty there. So, but that's one of the candidates. In among this, now we've got High King. This is a hybrid wheat, and we talked last year when we did the tours about hybrids and how important they are going forward. The new technology, the way they're breeding, carrying the key traits is essential for crop production in the UK going forward. This is the first stage of the hybrids. The next generation of hybrids are going to come on probably 2025, and that's when things will really get exciting, when you talk about hybrid wheats, and things will move forward very quickly after that. But these hybrids are all about carrying key traits. So we're now moving into the Group 3s. These are the biscuit wheats, and the first one here is Barrel. It's 100 for yield national average, but it's 104 in the north. So this is the highest yielding of the soft 3s in the north, and it's been a good variety. It's been really consistent since it came out. It's a 9 for yellow rust, but its big weakness is its Septoria score at 4.3. And that's a real threat. I don't think we've had a proper Septoria, real bad Septoria year since this variety came out. It's got away with it. It's yielding well, good grain quality, stands fairly well. So it's a real popular variety in the north because of that out and out yield. Moving on to Bassett, KWS Bassett. Bassett and Barrel come out in the same year, and Bassett to a certain extent has been a little bit of the shadow of Barrel. It's not quite as high yielding. Always looks good. I've always liked it. Always looks good. In fact, the host farmer here, that's what he grows. So the surrounding crop round the plots, the commercial crop is Bassett, and he gets on really well with this as a variety. But it's a little bit behind the pace in yield compared with Barrel in the north. And moving into Lisset, come out a few years ago, 100 for yield, so it's there or thereabouts within the Group 3s. Once again, Septoria is a weakness of it, and 5.5, but it's doing okay. Folks seem to like it. Clare, well, Clare's been around as long as Jeff Mason, so we don't need to speak about that. And we'll stop at Firefly. This was a new variety, come onto the list last year, KWS Firefly, 102 national average for yield. And until this variety came on, historically the Group 3s were poor on their disease scores. You know, they were weak on Septoria, weakish on yellow rust. This one's come on, it's a 9 for yellow rust, it's a 7 for Septoria, and it's a nice variety. Early driller if you want to put it in early, so it's fitting with the north, although it is slightly lower yielding in the north. But I think this would be my pick of the soft 3s. So now we're into the soft 4s, and we've got one soft 4, and then we've got a row of candidates. But this is RJT Sake. This is a new variety onto the list this time. So it's high yielding, 104 for yield. Once again, we've got good disease scores with this variety. It's a 9 for yellow rust, 6.4 for Septoria. One problem with it, it's a +3 to ripen. drapes really late, and that's because its parent is Revelation. And we all know what Revelation is. You know, it's been really consistent. It's been good grain quality, cleanish. You know, it's been clean for a few years, and that's in the parentage, and that's why we're getting the same traits with Saki. It's not a bad soft forward. Moving into the candidates, and we've got a range of candidates here, and some of these are soft 3 candidates. The first one's Galactus, and I'm not going to say too much about these soft 3s because actually I think some of the candidates are going to have a real challenge to get on this year. Galactus, weak strawed, it's 101 for yield, so it's lower in yield. I think it's going to have a challenge to get on this one. They have to be higher yielding than what's already recommended or have a key trait, and that's doing neither. The one I would pick out the soft 3s I actually quite like as a candidate, and that's Astronomer. It's 102, so it's equal to the highest yielding on the list. It's got really good disease scores. It's a 9 for yellow rust, and it's a 7 for septoria, but its grain quality is tremendous. 78.1 for its spec weight, and a weakness would be mildew at 4, but actually looking at the varieties, I think that's my pick of the soft 3s candidates. Prince is actually the highest yielding of the soft 3 candidates at 103, but we'll have to wait and see. And Merit's another one, soft 3. It's got good disease scores actually. It's a 9 for yellow rust and a 7 for septoria. It looks clean, you know, even looks clean in the untreated plot. Once again, we'll have to wait and see how they get on. So that was the candidates of the soft 3s. We're back into the soft 4s now, and Leeds, niche market. It's really popular up that northeast coast, but other than that, it's not a popular variety across the UK, but it's been about for a long time. We all know what that is. Bennington, another soft 4. I'm not going to say a lot about this one because when it first came on, it did well in its candidate year. Then the first year, as I recommended, it didn't do so well. It had not a bad year last year, but it's shocking for yellow rust. I mean, we can see there it's gone with it. So it's not one for the north. It's lower yielding in the north. On to Sundance. This has been out a few years, and it's exceptionally clean variety. You know, really good on yellow rust, good on septoria. In fact, when it first came out, it was the highest untreated yields with this variety. It needs a good PGR. It can get a little bit leggy. You wouldn't know it here because I think Connor's looked after them well and shortened them with a growth regulator. But yeah, this one needs good PGR. A little issue with this is its specific weight, 74.5. It's just a little bit lower than where you would want it to be. But other than that, every year we come into the trial plots, we look round, and it stand out as being exceptionally clean. And this year, it's still clean. So nice variety. On to Skyscraper. This is my favourite variety. Soft group 4. It's 105 national average. It's 103 in the north, so this is the highest yielding wheat on the recommended list, and drops a little bit, 2% in the north, but I really like it. 8 for yellow rust, so it's good on yellow rust. Its weakness is septoria. It's a 5 for septoria, and you know that needs managed, but it's a tall variety. It needs PGR. But it's a good standard actually. You know, everybody said when it first came out that Skyscraper, it was its name, really tall, it was going to fall over. It's a 7 for standing, and it's a really strong 7. So all in all, I think this is a really good package. Doesn't look so good in this plot here, but it's a real sandy site this, and this is probably the sandiest bit of the whole plots. But once again, this is another one of my picks. It's positive for distilling as well, so it fits this northern market up where we are. All round good variety, one of my picks. Motown, never really taken off, so we'll just skip past Motown and go on to Spotlight. Another nice variety. It's 103 national average for yield, drops away a little bit in the north. came on the same year as Skyscraper, and it's always struggled against Skyscraper because ultimately Skyscraper's producing that out and out yield. But it's a nice looking Group 4 soft. Elation, been about a few years now, and it's still quite popular. It seems to do well in the north. It's 101 national average. It's consistent. Actually looks quite well here today. I think for its Septoria score being down where it is at 4.3, I mean that's a worry, but when you look into the untreated plots, I'm quite impressed with this the way it's looking here. Jackal's a northern variety. It's never really demanded much of a market share, but it seems to do well in the north. It's 102 for yield. Yeah, very much a northern variety. So moving into the soft 4 candidate varieties, and there's a whole load of the candidates coming in, and not one of them I don't think is going to make it in these soft 4s. You've got Skyscraper at 105 for yield, and I think the highest yielding of the candidates at the moment is 102. So I just don't think that these candidates are going to make it in the soft 4s. Tapestry's the one we've got here. It doesn't excite me. So you're moving into the hard Group 4s now, and this is reflection, and it's always good to have reflection in the site just to demonstrate the disease that you can get. And if you look at the untreated plot, that's very characteristic of reflection, and the fact it's absolutely shocking for yellow rust. It was a really good variety when it came out and really responsive to fungicides, but you can't justify growing it when it's got yellow rust that bad. And the next one on the list, Costello, and I like Costello. It's not the highest yielding variety. It's a 99 national average for yield, 98 in the north, but its disease scores are good. You know, it's good on yellow rust, fairly good on Septoria, short, stiff strawed, and where this one really wins out is its grain quality. It's got the very best grain quality of any variety on the recommended list. And it fits the bill because you can put it in areas where you maybe don't have to be so timely with your fungicides, and you'll get to it. I just think that's still got a fit, even though if it had another 4% yield it would be an absolute cracking variety, but still fits the bill in some areas. And actually when you look at how clean it is in the untreated plots, you've got 2 really bad varieties for yellow rust either side of this, and yet it's still staying fairly clean, so it's credit to it. On to Keren. Keren's been a high yield, and it was very high yield, and it's 102 for yield. It's got an east-west recommendation because it's got low Hagberg. Saying that, it seems to perform okay in the north, out and out yield, but its disease scores aren't very good. You know, it's really bad for yellow rust, as you can see on that one, on the untreated plots. Down Lincolnshire and places like that, they really like it, but I'm just not a fan of that variety. So moving into Chabras, been about a few years now. This was bred by Syngenta, and it's been a good variety. It's been up there in yield. It's 102 for yield. Its disease package is its robust disease scores, 6.3 for Septoria, so it's decent disease package. It's a 7 for standing, but it's a weak 7. This needs plenty PGR. And interestingly, last year, we all knew it was a bad harvest last year. Noticeably, we've seen quite a bit of sprouting in the Chabras, which was disappointing, but I still think that everything goes well for this variety, it'll still reward you. I think although it's a good variety, it has been superseded by some of the newer varieties from Syngenta that have come on. I'll not waste much time in Dunstan. It was a tall, stiff-strawed variety, but it's broken down to disease. You can see from the untreated plot that it's gone now. So Gravity is it's a real nice variety. This, it's been around a while. It's been seriously consistent. 103 national average for yield. Last year we've seen it breaking down a little bit to disease. In here it's not too bad, but it needs plenty of PGR. It's a weak strawed variety, but it will yield, and it's been quite popular. I think its popularity is slipping a little bit now because I think there is better varieties coming on. And this is going to be one of these better varieties. We talked about it last year. It was one of my favourite hard 4s, and it's still one of my favourite hard group 4s. And this is Gleam, 103 national average for yield. Disease scores is 7 for yellow rust. It's a 6.3 for septoria, so it's got a good disease package. It stands well. It's an early driller, it's a medium driller, and it's a late driller. It fits in every one of them slots. It performs on light land and it performs on heavy land. So a real all-round good package. The other thing is it's a good second wheat. So I think as group 4s go, this has got to be one of the group 4s that you look at. Good first wheat, good second wheat. It's clean, it stands well, fits all soil types, and a versatile drilling window. I think that's an important variety, and it'll probably be the biggest variety this year. Moving on to KWS Parkin. This was a candidate last year and it failed to get on, and I think it's a little bit disappointing that it hasn't got on because I actually quite like this one. 102 for yield, so it wasn't up there at the dizzy heights of the 104s and 105s for out and out yield. But it's got some key characteristics. It's early to ripen, so it's a -1, and it's an early driller. You can put this in beginning of September and it would fit well. Disease package, it's a 9 for yellow rust. It's 5.5, 5.5 for septoria, and that's maybe a little bit of a weakness for it, is its septoria score. But I actually think it's got a part to play on some of these farms. I like that variety, even though it's not on the recommended list. There will be seed available because KWS are putting a bit of weight behind it because they think it should have been on the recommended list. So moving on to Inciter, this is a Syngenta variety. This is the highest yielding hard group 4. It's 105 for yield and it's 105 in the north, so it's performing really well in the north. It's a tall variety, it needs PGR, it's a 7 for standing and a 6 without PGR, so it's needing growth regulator. You've got to be aware of that. It's a 7 for yellow rust, 6.6 for septoria, so its disease package is robust. It's a good all-round. Grain quality is exceptional, 78.1 for its specific weight, so good all-round variety. It's not the prettiest looking variety when you look at it, but it certainly performs well, so I think it's a good option, that one. It's a mainstream driller. I wouldn't drill this one early, but it's a mainstream driller, and once again I think that's one to look at for this year and consider. Moving into Kinetic, this is another candidate last year from KWS. I didn't think it was going to get recommended. It came on. It's extremely high yield and it's 104 for yield. Excuse me, 104 for yield, and its grain quality is exceptionally good. But where it lets itself down is its disease scores. It's not good on septoria and it's even worse on yellow rust. I mean, it came on as a 6 for yellow rust. That is never a 6. I would say that's a 3 or a 4. And the reason why I'm saying it's that bad is because its parent is reflection. I don't think it's worth risking growing that. Certainly not if you're in a yellow rust area. Undoubtedly it'll demand a market share because of its out and out yield though, but it's not one that I'll be pushing. So now we're into the candidates, of the hard 4 candidates. Once again, I'm not sure any of these candidates are going to make it as the hard group 4s. There's nothing really that's out and out yield or has a key trait that's going to bring them forward and onto the list. Cranium, as I say, 103. Average disease package at 6 for septoria, 9 for yellow rust. It looks okay in the untreated yields, but whether it gets on or not, I don't think they will because they're not high enough yielding. Clipper is another one from Syngenta. Although it looks good here and it looks fairly clean in the untreated plots, I don't know that it's going to get to beat their variety they've already gone in Inciter. I just don't think that it's going to make it. Might be wrong. Syngenta think it will. And Silver Surfer, well, I'm not a fan of this. It's lower in yield, 101. It's got weak straw and it's average disease scores. I'm not a fan of this one. And then moving on to Astound. Astound looks all right here actually, maybe a little bit thin, but that could be the soil type once again, because as I said, it is very sandy on this site. We'll have to wait and see, but I think the hard group 4s have got a real challenge to get onto the recommended list this year. So that's us at the end of the wheat plots. We'll now move on and we'll go into the barleys. So we're into the barleys now. There's 30 varieties of barley in these plots, 2-row conventionals, and then we'll move on to the hybrids. So the first one's Cassia, been around a long time. Cassia, still popular because of its grain quality. It's well behind the pace on yield. It's a typical KWS variety because it's poor on mildew, but its grain quality is the best on the recommended list. So still demand the market share just purely because the growers like that exceptionally good grain quality. Glacier's another one, has been around a long time from KWS. KWS had a massive market share for a while, and Glacier was another one that was in along with the Cassia and the Towers, but it's losing pace, not one I would pick now. There's better varieties. Likewise, Tower, it was a tremendous variety. It was my pick a few years ago, but it's slowly dropped back on yield. It's losing its way on a bit of disease. It's breaking down a little bit, and there is better varieties now than Tower. You know, KWS are bringing new varieties through, so it's done as well, Tower, but I think it's time to look at something else. KWS well, this was the next generation on from in the KWS varieties, and it's done really well. It's demanded 30% market share last year, so it was the number 1 in the barleys. 102 for yield. Its disease scores are okay. It's once again typical KWS, and the fact its weakness is mildew, but it's done as well. I think that it will drop its market share this time because we've got another one from KWS coming on, and then another new one next year. So I think although it's been really good, it will drop back a little bit this time. And this is Surge. This is a Syngenta variety we've had for 4 years now. I really like Surge. It's up there in yield. It's middle of the pack when it comes to the yield. Its disease scores are better. It's out a totally different gene pool because it's bred by Syngenta. Totally different genes, and it's doing well. It was the highest yielding variety, conventional variety, in the Carlisle plots last year in 2019. So did really well over there. I think that's one to consider if you're looking at 2-row conventionals. It does need a bit of PGR because it's maybe not as stiff-strawed as some of the other ones. Orwell's exceptionally stiff-strawed. Surge you need to give a bit of a PGR too, but good variety, nice grain quality, and it looks good in the field. So moving on to KWS Hawking, and this was the one that I was saying, it's the next generation of the KWS. This has come on as the highest yielding conventional barley on the recommended list. 104 for untreated yield, and KWS are starting to improve their disease scores a bit now as well, so we're seeing far better disease ratings. It's a 5 for mildew and a 6 for wrinkle, and this is going to take quite a chunk of the KWS market share away from Orwell. So it's going to take a bit of the market share away from Orwell and probably from some of the other varieties as well. So that's a real nice conventional barley from KWS, one to consider. And then we move on to KWS Patriot. This is a candidate variety, not added onto the list. It failed last year, so we'll keep going. This is LG Mountain. I really like this variety. It's 104 for yield. It's 105 in the north, so this is the highest yielding of the conventional barleys in the north. good disease ratings. There was a few bit of questions over its standing ability, and I think it's answered them questions. Yeah, it needs PGR, but it's a fairly good stander, good grain quality, it's early to ripen, high yielding in the north. I said it last year and I still think this one's a good variety. Flynn came on last year as well, and they really liked it in the south. I was never a fan, and I'm still not a fan. Where this one does win out is its grain quality. It's really, really good grain quality on Flynn. Stands fairly well, but as I say, I think there's better for the north. I'm not a big fan of that one. But one that I really do like, and this is Valerie. We mentioned last year about Valerie, and still I think it's a good variety to grow. 101 for yield, so it's maybe not the highest yielding. Its disease scores are good, it's exceptionally clean. Its grain quality is exceptional. You know, it's second best to Cassia. It's right up there. And overall, it's just a nice, good looking variety. I think it will sell out, this variety, this year. It's turning quickly in the site, you know, when you look at the untreated plot, it looks well, but yeah, I think that's one to consider as well. So Hawken and Valerie and Surge. So we're into some of the candidates. That's Dallam, which was a candidate variety not taken forward. We looked at it last year and it didn't really excite in any of the trials, so they haven't taken it forward. KWS Cresswell, been about a few years, doesn't demand much of a market share now, and as I said, I think there's better KWS varieties if you're going down that route. So this is a candidate variety for 2020. This is Bordeaux, so we're into some of the candidates. It looks all right, but we'll have to wait and see how it does. You know, on paper it looks as though it's going to be okay, but we'll have to wait and see. KWS Tardis, this is one that I would expect, I would put money on it will make it through onto the recommended list this next time. Good variety, it's going to be higher yielding again. Better disease scores, because KWS are starting to really improve their breeding of better disease scores. So I think Tardis will be one that will get onto the list this next time, and it will do well. Quite like that variety as a candidate. Chester, yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it does, like some of these other varieties. It looks good in the untreated plots as well. Likewise, Pixie, there's a whole raft of varieties that are coming through, and whether they all make it, it's going to be a real challenge. Jordan was a candidate variety last year, and it's made it onto the list. There's not a lot of seed about. I don't think there's going to demand the market share because there just isn't that seed available, and even though it looked good in the trials last year, it doesn't seem to look as good this year, but it looks better here than it does at Carlisle site. So we're into the malters, and it's not a massive malting area around Northumberland, but once you get up into the borders and further north, then you start to see a bit of malting. Crafts, the popular one, it seems to do really well, but if you're not going to get that malting premium, I wouldn't even grow the malters. That's going to be the big thing, is getting that end market. And if you can get the end market and get the premium, then that's fair enough. But if you're not, I would consider just growing feeds. Sophia was a candidate variety in 19, not added to the list. Likewise, Faye. So that's the end of the excuse me. That's the end of the conventional 2 rows, and I think Hawken, Valerie, and Surge would be my 3 go-to varieties on the conventionals, and I do think that KWS will get a nice one coming through in the candidates as well. So moving on to the 6 rows. 6 row conventionals, I'm really not a fan of. I said it last year and I was a bit controversial with 1-2 people. I think if you're going to grow 6 row conventionals, you're going to be challenged with spec weight and that's where the hybrids are coming in. But it's a horse for the course. Some people like them. I'm not a fan. You've got a stern funky here. They've been about a few years. Most people know a bit about them two varieties now. And then we've got some, where I think these 6-row conventionals do fit is with some of the new technology, and that's in the barley yellow dwarf-eyes tolerance. And Raffaella is one of the newer varieties that's got the tolerance trait, and I think that's a key trait if you're bothered with BYDV, which I think most places are. So Raffaella is one that you would consider. It's got that key trait, which is adding something to the 6-row conventionals. Sensation is another one. It's a candidate that's going to get onto the list, I would think, this time, which is once again 6-row conventional. It's a bit like Raffaella. Its key trait is the BYDV tolerance, and I think excuse me, I think this is a better pick if you're going for the 6-row. I think if you're going to go for a 6-row conventional, I really like Sensation. It's got the tolerance, the BYDV tolerance, 104 for yield, so it's up there on yield. It's really good disease package. I quite like that one, and I think that's going to fit the bill. So now we're into the hybrids, and this is where we're really seeing some steps forward in barley growing, and this is Bazooka. Been around a long time and it still performs really well. You know, stands well, decent grain quality and high yielding, 106 for yield. So we know a lot about Bazooka. It's been about a while, but I still think that's a really good variety. And then we move into Libra. This has been one of my favourites for a couple of years now. It's not the highest yielding of the hybrids. It's 103 national average for yield, but it looks good. It's got good disease scores. It stands fairly well. Where this one really wins out is its spec weight. It's got the second best spec weight of any variety on the recommended list. The only one that was beaten it was Cassia, and it's a shame that this is its last year as a commercial variety, because a lot of farmers have really liked that, and I think it's worth looking at again this year. So we're into Belmont, and it was the highest yielding on the list last year. Bit weaker Strauds, that was the danger with this one. Its disease scores weren't as good as some of the other hybrids, but it had that out and out yield. I still think there was one or two others that I would have picked before Belmont, but if you were chasing out and out yield, that was the one. So moving on to Kingsbarn, that was new onto the list last year, and this is one that I would pick over Belmont. 108 national average for yield, so it's the same as the Belmont. It was a really good standard. It was an 8 last year. It's just dropped to a 7 this year, which is a bit of a shame, but it's still good standard. It's got good disease scores, really good grain quality. So Syngenta moving that breeding program forward all the time. Initially when hybrids come out, yeah, you got the yield, but the grain quality, the spec weight maybe just wasn't quite where you wanted it to be. Well, now you're seeing the breeding where they're getting exceptionally high yields and you're getting really good grain quality. So I really like Kingsbarn. That's one of my picks of the hybrid. SY Thunderbolt, this is another hybrid. It's a real shame that this is on a real horrible bit of the field here, and it's not looking as good as it possibly. It looks better at the bottom end. It's just been a bad bit of the field, but this is a new candidate variety from Syngenta that's going to be sort of the next generation again on the hybrid barleys. 109 for yield, so we're high yielding. Once again, it's got that grain quality and it's good disease scores. So although it doesn't look very good here, this is a nice candidate variety, and this, I'd be disappointed if this didn't make it through onto the recommended list. And there's another one that's Armadillo. It's another one of the candidate varieties. Although it looks better here, I still think I would pick Thunderbolt. So that's a roundup of the barleys. If you're going for hybrids, I would Kingsbarn and Libra, the two key varieties of the hybrids. So that's the end of the tour around the plots. I hope you have enjoyed it. It's not the same as actually getting here on the day and having the proper discussion, but it's the best we could do this year. So any other information, please contact your agronomist or give myself a phone and we'll do our best to help.
Thank you for watching. We appreciate that was a much longer video than what we have been producing throughout the season, but we hope that it gave you a good chance to have a look at how the plots are looking, at how the varieties in the plots compare to the varieties that you have on your own farm, and also to have a look at some of the new varieties and candidates that are coming through that you might be interested in trying out yourself on your farm. We look forward to welcoming you in person this time to our trial site next year, where we will have more varieties, and we'll also be looking at some of the new technologies and innovation that is coming into agriculture over the next coming years. So stay tuned, and we look forward to seeing you next year. Thank you.